Coronation Street previews one of next week's most emotionally raw scenes as a desperate father reaches breaking point. Nick Tilsley, reeling from the discovery that his teenage son Sam has been battling psychosis, wants answers, and he wants someone to blame. Next week, he gets both. We have the full story. There is a particular kind of parental grief that comes not from loss, but from the devastating realization that your child was suffering right in front of you and you did not see it. That is where Nick Tilsley finds himself in next week's Coronation Street, and actor Ben Price has spoken with striking honesty about just how seismic that realization has been for his character. Sam Blakeman has been admitted to hospital. His loved ones have finally grasped the full extent of what he has been going through, the psychosis, the terrifying hallucinations centered on Roy Cropper, the escalating crisis that has been unfolding largely in secret for weeks. For Nick, the transition from concern to crisis has happened with frightening speed. As Price himself put it, his character has gone from assuming Sam was dealing with ordinary teenage angst to confronting the reality that his son has psychosis and needs professional hospital treatment. That, in the actor's own words, is a big leap. And in the aftermath of that leap, Nick wants to understand how it was possible for things to get this bad without anyone catching it sooner. That question, entirely understandable from a father in pain, is about to turn combustible next week in a scene set at the Bistro. Nick is there with Eva Price when Ben Driscoll arrives, visibly sheepish, and makes an admission that proves to be the match that lights the fuse. Ben acknowledges that he had noticed Sam behaving strangely at some point recently, and said nothing. Did not follow up, did not raise the alarm, moved on. For Nick, already running on fear and guilt and the desperate need to make sense of what has happened to his son, that admission is intolerable. He erupts, and his accusation is pointed and specific. He does not simply accuse Ben of carelessness. He accuses him of silence motivated by self-interest, claiming that Ben kept quiet because he wanted to keep Sam on track to testify at Megan Walsh's upcoming grooming trial. Sam as a witness, Sam's well-being as collateral. Whether that accusation is entirely fair is, of course, another matter, but fairness is not what Nick is operating on right now. He is operating on terror and love and the overwhelming need to direct his anguish somewhere. The scene escalates to the point where Nick snaps entirely, demanding to be left alone. Ben, Eva, David, and Sarah reluctantly comply and begin to leave, but in a moment that carries its own quiet devastation, Nick's demand includes Toyah, his partner, the person who should, in any ordinary circumstance, be exactly who he turns to in a moment like this. Instead, she is swept up in the blanket dismissal, left standing in disbelief as Nick shuts out everyone who cares about him. It is a moment that speaks to something Ben Price has articulated clearly in discussing his character's state of mind. Nick, the actor explained, has always been aware of the tension between wanting to protect Sam and wanting to give him the freedom to grow into a young man. He has been conscious of Sam's tendency towards insularity, the moments of withdrawal that Nick read, perhaps too charitably, as the normal patterns of a thoughtful, introverted teenager. What Price describes as teenage angst in Nick's framing. That charitable reading, it turns out, masks something far more serious. And Nick's willingness to interpret Sam's retreat into himself as ordinary adolescent behavior, rather than the early signs of a deepening crisis, is now something he will have to sit with. The actor's honesty about Nick's partial blindness to what was happening is one of the most valuable things about how this storyline is being handled. It does not position Nick as negligent. It positions him as human, a father who saw what he hoped to see right up until he could not anymore. Ben Driscoll's role in all of this remains genuinely complicated. The question of whether his silence was driven by concern for the Megan Walsh trial, by simple oversight, or by something else entirely, is one the show appears to be leaving deliberately open. What is not open is the impact of that silence on Nick, who, in the absence of clear answers, has landed on the most painful explanation available. Meanwhile, Sam is in hospital, beginning what will hopefully be the start of proper treatment and support. The real Roy Cropper, bewildered and distressed by the role his image has played in Sam's illness, remains a figure of genuine compassion in this story, and the wider circle of people who love Sam are now finally aware of the full picture. Coronation Street continues on ITV and ITVX, with Nick's explosion threatening to fracture the relationships around him at the very moment he needs them most. Next week promises some of the most emotionally demanding scenes the show has delivered in this storyline yet. We will have full coverage as events unfold. Until then, stay with us. Coronation Street fans convinced Gary Windus is hiding a secret for Sarah Platt. Coronation Street viewers are becoming increasingly convinced that Gary Windus is hiding an important secret, and many now believe he could be protecting his ex-partner, Sarah Platt. The pair have attracted attention in recent weeks as they continue to support each other during the investigation into Theo Silverton's murder. Their growing closeness has not gone unnoticed, especially by Gary's wife, Maria Windus, who has become increasingly suspicious of their relationship. The mystery began after Theo Silverton was found dead on the night of Lisa Swain and Carla Connor's wedding. Since then, several Weatherfield residents have been named as potential suspects, including Gary, Sarah, Todd Grimshaw, Summer Spellman, Christina Boyd, and Danielle Silverton. For a time, the investigation appeared to focus on Summer after evidence linked her to the crime. However, recent developments have cast doubt on her guilt. During the latest episodes, Tyrone Dobbs finally admitted to police that he saw Summer on the night Theo was killed and that she was alive before the murder took place. His statement could prove crucial in clearing her name. Meanwhile, Detective Kit Green remains convinced that Gary is involved. During a recent confrontation, Kit made it clear that Gary is still his number one suspect. Although Gary denied any wrongdoing, he appeared visibly uncomfortable whenever Theo's death was discussed. The biggest talking point came when viewers were shown a flashback from the night of the murder. In the scene, Gary was standing on scaffolding holding a mallet while looking down at Theo's lifeless body. The image immediately raised questions about his involvement and appeared to place him at the scene. However, many fans believe the show is deliberately making Gary look guilty in order to hide the real truth. Instead, they think he may be covering for Sarah. Viewers pointed to a conversation in which Gary asked Sarah why he had to be caught up in a web of lies, interpreting the comment as a clue that he knows more than he is willing to reveal. As a result, some fans have begun to suspect that Sarah could be hiding a dark secret of her own, despite the fact that she was also attacked on the night of Theo's death. Whether Gary is guilty, protecting Sarah, or hiding something entirely different, viewers are convinced there is much more to the story. With the investigation continuing, the truth behind Theo Silverton's murder remains one of Weatherfield's biggest mysteries.